And now, to talk about best practices for IP protection, please welcome our next keynote speaker, Ms. Garima Sahney, Associate Partner, SaiKrishna and Associates. Ma'am, may I request you, please?
So, we spoke about the issues that are there with the connected cars, and we spoke about a lot of problems and the solutions that are available and that the industry needs to explore in this area. What I'm going to talk about is a slightly different aspect which also needs to be touched upon with equal importance if we are to make a robust industry in this area. This issue is about, I would say, setting up right IP practices and the legal framework in this industry. Coming from the legal background, I think it's important for me to educate everyone here and also to educate myself in this area as to understand what can be the issues and the risk and liabilities in this area when the industry grows forward and what challenges can come up. And at the same time, I would like to educate everyone here, giving some perspective from the legal side as to how things have to be ascertained, how things have to be taken up, how the courts will actually act in or decide things in this manner. So that kind of will set up a right legal framework at the right stage. It shouldn't happen that we are too late in deciding, what decision making should happen and when it has to take place. So I'll give you an example of the mobile industry. Specifically, I'm taking this example because this industry of connected cars is very much similar to the mobile telecommunication sector because the issues have been same. If you see at a granular level, you would find that the issues of cyber security came up when the telecommunication grew up. Before that, cybersecurity was not a very big issue. The issue of interoperability, that whether the mobile phones in India can operate outside India also, or whether cross-border communication can happen, whether one device can communicate effectively with another device, and how we can switch from network to another network. The issues of interoperability came in when the mobile telecommunication business took over. Same here, the same issue is a prominent issue in the connected car sectors because the cars are required to connect with another cars. The cars are also required to communicate and interact with the road infrastructure where we will need to, the automated cars will need to understand what the traffic rules are, what is happening, is the car allowed to kind of take that speed or is required to control the speed. So that all can happen only when the interoperability regime is properly set in and the proper infrastructure for that is set in. This is also very much similar to the mobile automation or mobile industry. There had been other issues of cross-border things, net neutrality, which also came up when the mobile sector or telecom sector actually took over. Now, which is why I say that if we have to talk about the legal framework, I think this mobile sector is sets the right precedence for us, because whatever will happen in the mobile telecommunication sector will have a very big impact in this industry also. Let me tell you that in the mobile sector, telecommunication sector, there has been an immense amount of standardization where the stakeholders from across the world have come together and have had laid down principles based on which the telecom network operators would operate, the devices would operate. Similarly, in this sector, there had been certain standardization, but only in the European and US countries, I must say. Institutes like ETSI or CEN, which is Committee for European Standardization. These institutes have come together, they've laid down some action plans. The Release 1 and Release 2 of ITS is already out. Release 2 is still under progress, I must say. These institutes have come together, they're trying to lay down some plans in the automation in the automated car sector, but there is so much to be done in this area, especially from the context of making it global. A car cannot run in isolation, an automated car also cannot run in isolation. It has to be present on the road, interacted with at least 1,000 cars at a moment, at least with multiple users at a moment, with the cloud, with the infrastructure and everything. So there has to be a standardization where everything or all the cars operate at the same level. Consider a scenario where my car is capable of operating at, say, a certain frequency, 30 megahertz, and your car owner provides a frequency to operate at, say, 60 megahertz. Our cars will never be able to operate. Much similar, much in a manner how the mobile phones will never be able to operate or talk when they are working at a different frequencies. Similar, which is why it's important that a standard protocol has to be in place, where all the devices, all the users, all the network providers, all the regulatory bodies are working at the same page, same technology, same norms of the legal framework as well as the technical framework. Only then this industry can actually pace up at the right scale. Now, coming to the legal side of it, if you talk about the standardization and essentiality aspect, you would see that the stakeholders come together and they lay a standard, and the implementers then adopt the standard. Which is bound to happen in this area also of automated cars. There will be standard setting organizations in the Europe and US where the market has already evolved to much extent. Those standards will be adopted by the domestic companies in India, and when this happens, there will be a lot of cross-licensing arrangement, a lot of negotiations, because there's a lot of IP going around it. There'll be a lot of issues because these will, if it's a standard protocol, if it's a universal protocol, there will be no non-infringing alternatives. It cannot be the case that a car manufacturer can say that I will not follow this protocol, I will have my own protocol. It can never happen. You can't have your own roads, you can't have your own frequencies, you can't have your own infrastructure. You'll have to follow what the standard is. Now, if that is the case, we will be ending up infringing the standard essential patents which cover the standard technologies, right? This gives a lot of room for having a very adverse kind of monopoly that can go into the pockets of the stakeholders which will have standard essential patents in this area. Now, to avoid that in the mobile telecommunication space, what the stakeholders and these SSOs have done is they have introduced a regime or a regulation called as FRAND, which is called as Fair, Reasonable and Non-Discriminatory Turn Licensing, which means that if the technology is a standard technology which has to be, which is mandatory or essentially deployed or implemented by everyone, and the implementers do not have any option to play around with that technology, in that case, the stakeholders or the patent owners or the proprietors of the technology, standard technology, should not have an option to exploit in whichever way they want, exploit the market in whichever way they want. There has been a control that has been set out by the regulatory bodies by way of this FRAND licensing, where the stakeholders can only demand a limited amount of licensing fee, and that licensing fee has to be fair and reasonable and non-discriminatory. It cannot be the case that the startups in this area are required to pay exorbitant amount of licensing fee. The license has to be same for the industry because it's a standard technology and everybody has to pay for it, right? So these kind of issues will be coming up, and I would say that the legal issues when grow in this industry, I think it's very important for this industry to take a precedent from the mobile telecommunication industry, because the same issues are coming up. The courts are dealing with these issues in the same manner, exactly the same manner, and those cases are setting up precedents. In fact, I must say that companies like Qualcomm, Nokia, and Intel, Wipro, whoever excelled, Motorola, NXP, all these companies who excelled and kind of laid the foundation of the telecom space are laying the foundation of the AI space also in the automated cars. So there is a big overlap, and whenever there is an issue on the legal side of this industry, I think we have to take precedence from the telecom industry. We need to closely watch what's happening in that industry. We need to closely watch what cases are happening, who are the key players, and how they are handling the legal issues that are coming up with relation to AI that is there in the phone and the tablets and all our electronic devices day to day. That is the take I would like to, have for this talk right now. Are there any questions? Really? Okay, thank you. Thanks a lot.